good morning, everybody. We are really excited to be coming at you live on DentonRadio.com. Today is the kickoff interview in a series of a lot of interviews we're going to get to do over the next few weeks pertaining to the Denton Black Film Festival that is coming up January 25th through 28th. Super excited to get the fest going. And today we could think of none other better to kick this off than...
Hi, I'm Carla Carter. I'm a professor at UNT in their Media Arts Department, and I'm excited that a project that I worked on this past summer is going to be an exhibit at the festival this year.
Yeah, well, really excited to have you here this morning. What is the project that you're working on?
It's called Freedman Town 2.0.
And this is very Denton involved and revolves around an old Denton story. Right. If you want to walk us through some of the history of that.
Right. So this project started a little over a year ago. I began just researching just some of the histories and stories in the Black community here in Denton, and was just fascinated by it. And knew I wanted to do a story about some of the people and places I've been hearing about and reading about. So I created a class this past summer called Interactive Community Video, and I had 18 college students in our department, and I tasked them with the challenge of researching the history, going to libraries, going to museums, going on field trips throughout the community, and then also going into Southeast Denton to meet with a few residents and just sit down and talk to them and just find out what that history was and what they wanted to be documented for this project.
Very cool. Very, very cool. So you have put together something that's not just a documentary. You've got an interactive documentary and lecture series. Very cool stuff. So we've got, let's just go through the whole schedule. At UNT on the Square, you've got some cool stuff going on. You've got the interactive AR pieces that people can do on their phone, and all the video components that go with that. Give us the schedule of everything Freedman Town 2.0 is going to be doing.
So we've already done like a few beta runs of this project. As you mentioned, it's an interactive documentary, and we utilize the augmented reality app that is location-based and image-based. So when you take your mobile device and it recognizes different images or locations, a video pops up about the history of the people or places that my students videoed. So for the Denton Black Film Festival, we have an exhibit at UNT on the Square. So we'll have huge photographs of these, just beautiful images of people from the community posted on the walls, and you can walk and interact with it like a museum gallery, but then you can put up your cell phone or iPad or tablet and have a video pop up about the history of the church or the person who we're talking to or what they did in the community and how they gave back. So that's one component of and that's going to be what's going to be an exhibit at the at UNT on the Square.
Well, it's so cool and such a creative idea to mix AR in with a documentary series. Absolutely. It's just cool. It's really, really cool. And one of the reasons why I'm really excited for this to be the first interview that we get to do is because when people that haven't been to a film festival hear film festival, they hear film. That's it.
Right.
Yeah. And there's film and there's music and there's poetry and there's comedy and there's AR and there's all these great interactive pieces. This is there's something that even if you weren't a documentary person, you could find something that you really enjoyed at the festival, and then it would probably hook you on documentaries later on. But that's what's so cool about it, is just so many different pieces coming together to one. So tell me a little bit more about the process of, you had 18 UNT students, all coming together to make this happen. What did that look like? How did that come together?
It was chaos, but in a good way. There were a lot of pieces and parts and components that took me months just to plan and prepare. I spent a few months just going out into the community and engaging with people and just seeing what stories they wanted to tell. So I did all that groundwork before the class began, a lot of research and meeting with different professors in the history department and librarians and things like that. So all that prep so that when the class started, students were divided into groups, and they each focused on a different, piece of history. If you were to break it down into a timeline starting from 1875 to present day, we chronicled different, just major points in history in Denton's Black community from that span of time. Wow. So it was intense, and it was a lot, and my students were amazing. They rose to the challenge and went above and beyond. We had students going to churches on Sunday mornings and
Wow.
getting invited to family dinners by some of the residents we interviewed. We did a lot of our interviews at the Martin Luther King Rec Center. Bobby Givens, the director of the Rec Center, was a tremendous help with this documentary, and he allowed us to film a lot of our interviews there and bring residents there to help tell their story, and he's in the video as well. We interviewed Betty Kimball, part of the American Legion Senior Center, and they welcomed us with open arms. So we interviewed a lot of the seniors that go to that senior center in Southeast Denton, and they were great with interacting with my students. They fed them. You know, college students always want to eat.
Hey,
we got some free cookies. And
college students a lot of stuff for free.
Right. So that interaction. So it's interactive not just on the technical aspect of augmented reality, but interactive in terms of engaging my students with the community around them. A lot of them didn't know anything about Denton's Black history. They didn't even know that there was a thriving community in Southeast Denton. They didn't know the history of Quaker Town or Freedman Town, which are some of the key components that our project focuses on. So they were able to learn that and see that.
So cool. So cool. So give us a little bit of the story. Why is this piece called Freedman Town 2.0?
Great question. So Freedman Town, after slavery, there are a lot of freedmen towns that came about in Houston, throughout Texas, Oklahoma. So that was a place where a lot of freed slaves settled, basically. And Denton's first Black settlement was coined Freedman Town, and that was in the southeast part of Denton, around where the MLK Rec Center currently is placed. So that was one of the first Black communities. So we did research about that, and that's one component of the documentary. Wow. After Freedman Town, a lot of the residents migrated to what's called Quaker Town, which is where the Civic Center is and Quaker Town Park is.
Gotcha.
And that's another history where in like the early to mid 1880s, a thriving Black community prospered, and they had their own businesses and their own doctor, own churches and schools and things like that. So that's another component of our documentary. And that's where the interactive part comes in, because we also have location-based trigger points at Quaker Town Park.
Cool.
So you can walk around and find out what used to be there, how there used to be a grocery store by Mr. Crawford, and there used to be a school, and St. James AME Church, which has a long history dating back from Quaker Town to now Southeast Denton. So that's another component. And then once, I don't know if you know, do you know the story of Quaker Town? Do you know anything about that history?
I know vaguely the story, but let's go through it just if anybody listening that doesn't know it.
So from the, from 1880s up until about 1920, 1921, Quaker Town was a prosperous community, like I said, with their own businesses, and they were self-sustaining and just, a prosperous Black community. In 1921, where TWU now resides, used to be the College of Industrial Arts. Basically, they didn't like Black people so close to the premises of the university, and they wanted to find a way to get rid of the Black community there because it didn't look good. They were trying to get accreditation, and to make it seem okay, they did it under the guise of getting a community park built where Quaker Town, was. So they passed a petition to remove the residents of Quaker Town and move them to another part of town, and the petition passed, and they built the park, was now Quaker Town Park, and where the Civic Center is housed, but they forced the residents off the land, and a lot of them didn't want to go. Some fought back. Will Hill, he's one of the residents, he tried to sue the city to stay in the home that he built, and he wasn't able to win. He didn't win the fight. A lot of residents, there's one woman who didn't want to leave her house, so she sat in a rocking chair while a horse and carriage basically pulled the house to the other part of town. Goodness. And there were only limited places that they allowed Black people to live back then. This is 1921, 1922, around that time. And they were forced to move to the southeast part of town, where now is a Black community that's now is more diverse than it once was, but that's where they kind of forced a lot of residents. Some actually left the state. A lot of the businesses never recovered, but then there were some remnants of Quaker Town that made it to Southeast Denton, like St. James AME Church. Some of the families and descendants are still there in that area. So that's like the third leg of our documentary. And we interviewed a lot of the residents that still reside in Southeast Denton. Yeah. Some have ties to Quaker Town and some don't. Some they came in, the 1950s and 60s. And they talked about a lot of the political activism that they did as a community to get the roads paved, or build a community center and the senior center. So they talked about a lot of what makes a community what it is today. So we had all ages kind of be a part of that process.
Wow. So this whole piece, Freedman Town 2.0, is kind of the transition from, okay, you had this thriving community, now it's been moved, and that whole process and how that's developed and changed over time. Wow. Oh man.
Yeah, we try, and we really want to focus on the living history and the legacy of those who are there today as well. We didn't want to just focus on what happened with Quaker Town. You know, that's a sore spot in the community and in our history, but that wasn't where history ended. And we want to make sure that we also got what happened after the demise of that thriving community, that there were still people who actively fought to rebuild the city. And that's what we're trying to celebrate with the exhibit at UNT on the Square.
Cool.
Those photographs are used to celebrate the legacy of the people who are living and who are still doing things to this day to help build that community. So it's kind of like a way to give respect, and hopefully when they come to view the exhibit, they'll feel that pride and that just that sense of celebration that we're trying to create.
Yeah, pride was the word that came to me while you were saying
Absolutely.
That's very cool. And that's where some of these AR components can come in. Is that you could go to Quaker Town and see what was there.
Absolutely,
back when it was a town rather than a park. Very cool.
Right.
Very, very, very cool.
So there's a lot of pieces and parts with this.
No, I love it. So and just in case anybody's watching and they or listening and they go, okay, what is augmented reality? It can walk us through that just a little bit as far as what they can see and experience this.
Okay, so augmented reality in its very basic definition is basically layering on a digital component on top of a physical component. And that can look in a lot of different ways, where you can have, have your mobile device looking at a building and there could be a 3D geographic image that pops up, or it can be text or music or video, a lot of different things. So we chose to use video as a digital overlay on top of physical images.
Cool.
And those physical images, like I said, they can be location-based, or they can just be more just image-based in terms of that facial recognition and things like that. So a lot of our images that'll be in the gallery, they will activate a video where that person talks about their contribution to just the history in this community.
Wow. Very, very cool. When I was I was at South by Southwest last year, and somebody had me put on some AR glasses, and I'm in the middle of a pretty empty room, and I turn around, and all of a sudden there's a ship right behind me. I'm going, whoa! So this is kind of what we're talking about. We're putting some video components in on some geolocation-based things, so you can really watch what you would have seen in this spot. Too freaking cool. Okay. Well, very cool. What are some other points and some other highlights you want to make sure people get to know about this project?
So January 8th, we're going to open at the gallery on the Square, and we'll be up for the entire month through February 3rd. But we also have two important events during the month of January. On January 11th, we're having a lecture series where people who are involved in the documentary will come out and talk about that experience and just the importance of preserving these histories and these legacies. On January 18th, students who are a part of the documentary, they're going to do a panel discussion and talk about that process of how do you engage communities and just what they got from that and what they learned. They have some great stories and testimonials to share with the community. And then that's on January 18th as well. And both of these events begin at 6:30. And afterwards, we'll do like a demo of how to use the app and just kind of talk about that and screen some select videos from the app.
Very cool. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. So the Denton Black Film Festival coming up very soon, but we've got all of these other cool things happening until then, which is awesome. Y'all make sure you check it out. DentonBFF.com is where you can find all the information on the festival. Anything else we want to touch on before we wrap up?
Just that I just hope you guys can come out and enjoy this piece of history that a lot of people worked hard on this project. Like I said, from my students in the media arts department to the residents who welcomed us with open arms. I just hope that a lot of people come and celebrate these stories.
Good. Love it. You heard her. Okay. Clear your calendar. You got to check it out. Freedman Town 2.0 right here in Denton, Texas. If you are not in Denton, you are missing out. This is where it all goes down. Thank you all very much for tuning in. We greatly, greatly appreciate it, and we can't wait to see all you guys at the fest. Thanks again for coming in.
All right, thanks.
Well, thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to check out DentonRadio.com for new Denton artists and where they're playing next. While you're surfing the internet, make sure you check out our friends Classic of Denton at ClassicofDenton.com.